Hi there, I'm Don Jones. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you there in person, but I wanted to congratulate you on starting your new Windows PowerShell user group. Local community is probably the most important and best kind of community. Look around you. These are the folks that are going to become your friends, your contacts, your colleagues. They're going to be part of your career long after your current job is just a memory and you're on to something bigger and better. These are the folks who'll help you solve problems, and you should make a point of trying as hard as you can to become a net contributor to your community instead of just a consumer. That doesn't mean you need to be an expert. Sometimes it's as simple as bringing a tricky challenge that you've been dealing with in PowerShell to a user group meeting. Stand up and offer to go through your problem. See what folks offer in terms of advice, and maybe sometimes you can repay the favor by offering them some advice. Sometimes you can just write a short article. Doesn't really matter. Get out there and contribute. In fact, we're looking forward to seeing you at PowerShell.org. If you've not been there, ask questions, offer answers, maybe offer a short article for our newsletter sometime, or offer to walk someone through a challenge that you were able to solve in an online tech session webinar. Regardless of what you choose to do, I'm glad you've chosen to get involved in community, and I'm glad you've chosen to make PowerShell an important part of your IT career. Let's talk for just a second about why I think Windows PowerShell is so important. I mean, there's the obvious thing that it's kind of cool, and the other obvious thing, I suppose, that it's being built into practically every Microsoft product. It's not so much important as it is virtually impossible to ignore. But it's important because PowerShell represents a little bit of a change in the way that Microsoft IT professionals have to approach their jobs. You see, in the past, it's been pretty easy for us to hide behind a layer of wizards and graphical user interfaces. A lot of times we didn't really need to know too much about what was actually going on under the hood in those products. Well, unfortunately, not knowing what's going on under the hood means you're not very good at troubleshooting, you're not very good at planning and architecture. I mean, you might think you are, but trust me, when you really run across a difficult problem, being a good PowerShell user means you wind up being better at just about everything else too. Here's a great example. True or false? It's possible to create a new Active Directory user and have a blank SAM account name attribute on that user. Go ahead, just hum the Jeopardy theme to yourself for a second while you come up with an answer. And because the correct answer is true. You can absolutely create a new Active Directory user that has a blank SAM account name. You can do it once, because the only requirement in Active Directory is that the SAM account name be unique, and blank is unique the first time. If you said false, what you're probably thinking is the Active Directory Users and Computers wizard, which will not let you create a user with a blank SAM account name. But see, that's the difference. With Windows PowerShell, we're not dealing with users, we're not dealing with wizards, we're not dealing with these high-level objects, we're dealing with the down-deep code. And dealing with that down-deep code is kind of one of the things that makes PowerShell a little bit more difficult to learn. You're going to be interacting with the technology at a lower level than really you ever have before. But once you get past that learning curve, you're going to be better and smarter at that technology than just about everyone else around you. Next time you go to work, sit down, kind of poke your head over the cube wall and look around you. Some of your coworkers are redundant. They're superfluous. They don't need to be there. The only reason they're there is because you're not managing your environment very efficiently. You need to decide if you're going to be the redundant one or if you're going to be the one that's standing after all the redundancy has eventually been worked out of the system. Because that's going to happen. You see, as dumb as they might be or as slow as they might be, management is eventually going to figure out that some folks can get the job done by pushing a single key, the enter key, to run a script. Other folks have to push next, next, finish all the time. One person spends an hour writing a script, and then somebody else can push enter to make that script run. And that's a tool maker. Other people, well, how much does it really pay to just push enter to run someone else's script? Like, I'm fine with the idea of people in an organization being button monkeys, meaning they just push the buttons, but I'd rather be the button maker because I'm the one that is going to be there for a long time. So think about that. Think about what you're going to do to your career to make sure you're the button maker, the tool maker. And if PowerShell is going to be part of your life, then that's probably a decision in the right direction. PowerShell is a big world. There's a lot to learn. The language itself has got a couple of dozen keywords, which is actually pretty approachable if you compare it to older stuff like VB script, frankly. But there's tons of other stuff. There's interactions with different products like Office 365 and Azure and SharePoint and Link and everything else. And there's all the amazing things people are doing with it. They're hooking it into Cisco. They're using things like desired state configuration so that they no longer have to write provisioning scripts to configure servers. They're just describing what they want the server to look like and letting DSC take over. It is a really, really exciting time. If you got into IT because it's cool, you're in a perfect world right now because IT just got cool again. PowerShell, DSC, these technologies are making it interesting. They're making it like a little puzzle. And puzzles can be difficult, but they can be fun to solve. And there's a tremendous sense of satisfaction when you do. On the other hand, if you got into IT because it seemed like an easy way to get a pay raise by basically doing the same thing you were doing in your basement at home, well, things may be a little challenging. That doesn't mean impossible. There's certainly a lot of resources that you can turn to learn Windows PowerShell and to become more of an expert. The only thing you don't want to do, well, two things you don't want to do. Number one, don't ignore the fact that this has happened and it is going to continue to happen. Don't think, well, I can probably just take a little bit more time and get to this later. You can't. You're actually 7 years behind the curve already. So really make sure you're diving into PowerShell full tilt. The other thing you shouldn't do is take that kind of negative approach of, well, I really didn't get into this to be a programmer, and so I don't think it's ever going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen. And you're either going to be a programmer, and that's what the whole DevOps thing is about. And yeah, PowerShell is a kind of programming. It's not C#, but it's still programming. And you're either going to be a programmer of some kind, or you're going to be learning to ask that, hey, would you like fries with that? Question an awful lot. So let's talk about some of those resources that can help you get started. I'm obviously a big advocate of a book I wrote with Jeffrey Hicks called Learn Windows PowerShell in a Month of Lunches. Only read a chapter a day. That's the idea. You read a chapter a day, and then you let your brain do your brain thing, and you will learn PowerShell. The sequel to it is Learn PowerShell Tool Making in a Month of Lunches, and that's how to take your PowerShell skills to the next level and become that button maker. From there, you can move on to a book Jeff and I co-authored with Richard Hicks called PowerShell In Depth, pretty much the reference of everything you need to know. And then make sure you're spending a lot of time on PowerShell.org. Learn a little bit at a time by subscribing to the monthly newsletter. It's free. It's not full of ads. We don't sell that to anybody. We don't rent it to anybody. It's mainly just technical articles and news about what's happening in the community. Hey, participate in the next scripting games when that comes around. It's a great way to kind of challenge yourself. You know how it's sometimes hard to find something at work that you can really dig your teeth into to kind of force yourself to learn PowerShell? The scripting games give you that chance. Show up at the PowerShell Summit. It's a big deal. We do one in North America and one in Europe each year, and it's an opportunity to interact with MVPs, experts, colleagues, peers, and a ton of PowerShell product team members. You literally get the inside scoop from the horse's mouth and an opportunity to give your feedback. They're very limited registration events, so it's not one of those things you want to put off. Once it opens up, you're going to want to make the decision to go, and we keep them as affordable as possible. PowerShell.org is a not-for-profit. So unlike all those big commercial conferences that's just trying to take as much as we can and pack you into a room with 13,000 people, we're keeping it down to a couple hundred folks, and we're keeping the price as low as possible. Also check out our tech sessions. It's a once a month chance to just get online for 30, 40 minutes and learn something new about PowerShell. So there's all these opportunities to learn a little bit at a time. And it's kind of a good way to keep up. Also listen to the Power Scripting podcast. You can do it on the commute back and forth from work. You can do it on the train. You can do it in the car. You can do it on the plane. Do it wherever you need to. But it's a great way to get an idea of what's new in the PowerShell world. And I kind of hear some of the inside stories from the folks that are making it all happen. It's really I guess it's the people side of the PowerShell world, and that's just as important. Getting to know those folks and really, really making this part of your career and part of your life is super important. So look, I'm going to let you go there. Again, congratulations on getting the user group going. And 2 bits of parting advice. Number 1, the next time you do something at work, ask yourself if there's any chance whatsoever you will ever do that exact same thing again. And if there is, spend the time to write a script. And you know how you can get the boss to give you that time? Make it part of your annual review. Hey, boss, I want in my annual review a requirement that I automate at least this many hours of manual effort. Because now everybody's got to take an interest in making that happen. And it lets you dig your teeth in. 2, second piece of parting advice, and probably the most important, keep it up. Keep up with your PowerShell and keep up with your user group. It's going to be real easy the next summer that rolls around or the next holiday to kind of blow it off. And once you've blown off that one meeting, you start wondering, well, I'd really rather spend the time at home with the kids instead of going out. Well, here's the thing. Your investment in community is an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your career. It's going to make sure you stay hired. It's going to make sure you get better jobs. That is an investment in that family. I think they'll forgive you a couple hours of being away if they understand the big picture, because community is really the key to PowerShell. We're the ones making it happen. We're the ones writing the script. We're the ones writing the DSC resources. We're the ones producing all the free ebooks up at PowerShell.org. Community is what's going to keep you connected and make you successful. And this user group is going to be a big part of that. So good luck, congratulations, and I'll see you online at PowerShell.org.